don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm John Henry Lucas. I was born December 20th, 1950. Uh,
Oh, okay. Real quick, look at me. Look at me instead of the camera. So, yeah,
okay,
yeah,
start over?
yeah. If you don't mind.
No, I don't mind. I'm John Henry Lucas, and I was born 1950 and born and raised here in Tonkawa, Oklahoma, out on a family farm. And went to high school here and graduated. That's where I'm at.
Okay. So, what was Tonkawa like when you were growing
Back when I was growing up, we all rode motorcycles. There were like 52 motorcycles in the parking lot at the high school, and everybody rode motorcycles. We had a special corral for them and everything. And then after that, as we got older, we got cars, and we had the good old cars back then. My first car was a '58 Chevy, and I would die to have it back again today. But anyway, we had a wonderful time growing up then, and life was easy back then. We had our ups and downs and everything, and but our main source of entertainment was just making a drag here in Tonkawa
was that?
and honking at each other when we'd meet each other on the street, and sitting down in front of the clinic and drinking a beer or two. And
Where was your drag place? I know in
well, the drag went from 9th and Grand on the west side of Tonkawa and came all the way out here to College. And sometimes you shortened it up there at 7th and Grand and just made a short one. But there's untold hundreds of gallons of gas used. I mean, that's what we did all the time. We just drug Grand all the time. And kids don't have that anymore. And it was great. We just all pile into cars and everything, and drag Grand. Just had a good time.
How much was gas then?
Oh, I know that there was a gas war going on one time up at Blackwell, and I had a '58 Chevy, and I think gas was 18 cents a gallon. And I sat down and did the math whether I would save money by driving to Blackwell to fill up my car. And I did save money, so I drove all the way to Blackwell just to fill up my car. And those days are gone forever.
So, any particular high school memories that you remember, maybe of some of the guys that you ended up serving with?
Well, uh, gosh, there's tons of memories and everything. And uh, I ran with Lee Derrickson when I was in high school, and we were kind of hell raisers and everything. And Lee eventually he wound up getting killed in Vietnam as a Marine, and he was a radio operator. And they got ambushed out in a rice paddy, and he took a round in the neck. But Lee he didn't have a car. He had a 2-ton truck, and we'd pile all the kids in there, and we'd go out to Deer Creek and go swimming. A whole truckload of kids, and that was good times. Lee used it to haul hay, haul brush, make money, and then I've got video at home of the day I went into the service, the day before I went into the service, riding around with Glenn Bray and Bernie Fuller. Bernie Fuller's since passed with cancer. But he had a GTO back then, and that was a pretty hot car back in that day. And we just were riding around drinking beer, taking videos of each other, and we used to have a railroad track come through town. And one time I was with Bernie. He was in his Cougar back then, and a train was coming through. It was going real slow. Well, Bernie got the bright idea he was going to see how close he could get to that train, without actually hitting it. Well, unbeknownst to him, here came a ladder on the side of one of the deals, just wiped out the front of his car. And that was funny. That was funny. Oh, but we really had wonderful times back then, and of course, everything was mini skirts back then. And I'll never forget when I left. I went to Vietnam in '70, and everybody was wearing mini skirts. I came home on leave, and in the middle of my tour, and the guys wouldn't believe me when I went back there because they went from mini skirts to maxis, clear down to their ankles, and that was a sad deal. But
All right. So, how would you compare Tonkawa now to then?
no comparison whatsoever. These poor kids today, they just don't realize what they're missing. These kids just hole up in their house, and I'm not too sure what the kids do, but I'm sure that I know that they're holed up in their house and drinking and doing drugs. But the main thing is video games and electronic devices. They're just totally caught up in it, and there's no social interaction. They can't even carry on conversations with each other without texting and all that. It's sad. It's a sad deal. When we wanted to talk to somebody back in our day, when I was in high school, we called them up, talked to them face to face, or went and saw them. And I pity these poor kids today that are growing up like this. They have no idea of the social life that they're missing out on.
All right. So, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted at the encouragement of the chief of police in Tonkawa, Oklahoma. I was somewhat of a hellraiser, and I liked to drink. And Pete Linton was a good friend of the family. He'd come out and play cards with my mom and dad and him. They'd play cards, and Pete called me in one day and he said, "John," he says, "if you don't go in the military," he said, "you're probably going to jail." And he was right, and I knew it. So I went over to join up. I started flying when I was 16 years old. I learned how to fly up at Blackwell, and from Dewey Mock. And I used to ride my motorcycle up there and take flying lessons. As a matter of fact, I soloed before my mother and father even knew that I was flying. And I came home and told them that I was flying and that I'd soloed. And my mom just thought it was the most wonderful thing in the world. And my dad pitched a fit. He said, "There's no way, you know." But I went ahead and continued. And I learned how to fly when I was 16 years old. And so when I went to join up in the military, I wanted to fly, and I wanted to fly in the Air Force. So first place I went was the Air Force recruiter, and they informed me that you had to have a degree in order to fly in the Air Force. Well, I definitely wasn't college material, so they said I could go down the hallway to the Army recruiter, and I could fly helicopters. Didn't need a degree for that. So out the door I went down there and talked to him, and I signed up to fly helicopters in the Army.
So, where were you living at the time?
I was living at home out on the farm, family farm.
Where's that at?
Southwest, 5 miles southwest of Tonkawa, out I-35 and Fountain Road. And
So, I think you kind of covered this, but maybe there's some other reason. So, why did you join?
because Pete Lynn told me that I needed to go, and so I did. You know, I mean, back in those days, guys did that. They joined the military, and they just went and did what they were supposed to do.
And I think you covered why did you pick the service branch you joined.
I might also add that I came from a military family. My dad retired military. My brother was big in the National Guard. He enjoyed it and everything. My uncle was a full bird colonel in the Army, And I had several uncles, and they all served in the military. It was a proud thing to do back in that day. It's a proud thing to do today.
Do you recall your first days in service?
Oh, Lord, yes. Yeah, I do. I did my basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, and I remember, and this was in 1969 when I joined, and I was at Fort Polk, Louisiana, standing in line to get my hair cut off, and Neil Armstrong stepped foot on the moon, and we was all listening on a transistor radio, and when that happened, so I can remember it. I remember it well, and I remember Fort Polk very well too.
What did it feel like?
Well, I was young and dumb and off on an adventure, you know, and it was just, you were just a bunch of guys just doing their thing.
So would you say that you were feeling like very proud, like where you
No,
are?
no, we was just on an adventure, you know. It was just an adventure. We had no idea what was to face us, but we were just all on an adventure, doing our time in the service.
So tell me a little bit more about your boot camp or training experience.
Well, we had a crazy drill instructor. I mean, this guy was insane. And of course, he was old Vietnam vet, and he come back, and it was his job to demoralize us and totally break us and take us down to absolutely nothing. So then, once we were there and we were totally broken, then the military would be able to work with us and raise us like they wanted to. But I had to question that guy's sanity from time to time, but he did a good job. And the thing I remember mainly about basic training was the lack of sleep. I mean, we went all the time, it seemed like, and just tired all the time, lack of sleep.
Sounds rough. So how did you get through it? Like mentally, physically? Did you have
Beech
support?
nut chewing tobacco. Really. A guy told me one time, he says, you know, you didn't want to fall asleep in class. When you're sitting out there in the sun and it's 100 degrees out there and you're tired and you're sleepy and you start to nod off, you don't want to nod off in front of a drill instructor, because you'll be out there making love to your rifle or something, you know, or doing push-ups, and you just don't want to get caught sleeping in class. So a guy told me, he said, you put a little pinch of beech nut chewing tobacco in your mouth, and when you start nodding off and getting sleepy, just swallow that juice. And that's how I made it. And I guarantee you, it will wake you up, and you won't have any problems.
So, did you have like a close group of friends while you were in boot camp?
Thomas Guidry, he and I were really close friends because we was both good in PT, physical training, and it was either he was the best or I was the best out of the whole company. I never played football in high school because of a head injury that I'd received, and but I did run track here and everything, and I enjoyed the physical part of it, and I was really good at it. And old Guidry and I, he was from Louisiana, and it was either him or me. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. We'd get up and run every morning, and a 5-mile run wasn't nothing when we got to the end of basic training. It was just easy.
So, which war or wars did you serve in?
I was just in Vietnam.
Where exactly did you go?
Well, when I first went over, they sent me to An Khê with the Fourth Army, and I was there for several months until they sent the Fourth Army back home. So after they sent the Fourth Army back home, well, we all were cut new orders, and everybody wanted to get sent back down south because it wasn't so bad down there. And they sent me just about as far north as you can possibly go. They sent me to Camp Evans in the northern part of I Corps. And it was a death sentence as far as I was concerned, and you know, that's what everybody kind of thought. That was just a death sentence to go up there because that's where it was really hot and heavy. And we was just south of the DMZ, so we was right up close to North Vietnam.
Do you remember arriving and what it was like?
When we left An Khê, they loaded us on a cattle truck, an 18-wheeler, in the back of it, and we headed out. And I don't know how far it was, but it took us all day to get there. And me being a pilot, we were scared to death being on the ground. We didn't like being on the ground. And we rode that cattle truck in the rain all the way up there. And it took us, I think, 10 or 11 hours to make that trip up there. And needless to say, we were pretty miserable with just the idea of going up there to Camp Evans in the first place, and then to be in the back of a cattle truck on the ground with the war going on around you, it didn't help us any.
So obviously you were a helicopter pilot, but what was your specific job assignment?
I flew Hueys over there, and we flew ash and trash. We just did everything. We did troop insertions, extractions, medevac people out, resupply, and combat assaults. And that's what we did every day.
So a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Did you see combat?
Really? Yeah. Well, you know, war is a terrible thing, and nobody should ever have to go to war. But it's necessary sometimes. And yes, we saw combat every day. And when I came back with 1,200 hours flight time. I didn't really know that it was that many hours of flight time until I got to comparing it to people who were sent down south. And those people came back with just 500 hours. So they did a lot of sitting around. And but we came back with 1,200 hours. It was almost every day, you know, if the weather permitted. And some days, even though the weather didn't permit, we went.
Were there many casualties in your unit?
In my unit, in the Ghost Rider unit, we didn't lose one person. And the reason we didn't lose anybody was because we were a bunch of rebels. We didn't fly like we were told to fly, especially during Lamson 719 when we made a large insertion move into Laos. They wanted you to fly formation, and we refused to fly formation. They also wanted you to fly at 2,000 feet, which is just insane. So we would go in at treetop level, and we got in trouble for it. But what are you going to do with a whole company of pilots that won't do what you want them to do? You know, they're going to send us back home, bend our dog tags. Well, we was already in Vietnam. It's the worst place you could possibly be. So we stood up to them, and because of that, it saved our lives. Because you take a helicopter that's flying at 2,000 feet, they can see you from this horizon all the way over the top to that horizon. But when you're flying treetop level or below treetop level, they only catch a glimpse of you for a second, and they ain't got time to hone in on you. And it's for that reason right there that we never lost one pilot or any of the crew to death. We had some shot up, but we never lost any to death.
tell me a couple of your most memorable experiences.
Well, the first thing that comes to your mind is, well, I'll tell you, when I first arrived in country. Of course, as a young pup, scared to death, on 90 other guys on there with you, and we landed at Saigon. And, this is it. This is Vietnam. We're going to die here. I've already lost 6 of my friends. And we taxied off the tarmac. We was sitting along the side of the runway there. And all of a sudden there was this big explosion inside inside the airplane. And I knew I was gone. I knew I was dead. Well, that's the first time I got killed in Vietnam. And come to find out, it was a thermos bottle that somebody had underneath their seat. And when they decompressed the aircraft, well, it exploded. But we didn't know that. And it scared us half to death, And I always figured that was the first time I died in Vietnam. And then that night, we was in the company area up there. And in the middle of the night, and I was on the top bunk, and somebody shot off a pop-up flare, which is a big bang. And I was out of there, and I probably went 10 feet before I ever hit the ground, And that was the second time I got killed in Vietnam, and I hadn't been there 24 hours. And the guys were laughing at us because there was old-timers in there fixing to go home too, and they was making fun of us for being newbies and everything. But no, we was scared to death when we got there. And then, of course, the overwhelming stench of the smell of Vietnam, napalm, and over there in Vietnam, they burnt the shit. They would have the dinks go out there, and these outhouses that you had, which you might have a 15-holer. Everybody went in there and used the bathroom together. And underneath them, they had 55-gallon barrels cut off, and that's what you went in. Well, Papa San would come along and drag those out and pour diesel fuel over the top of them and then burn it. And that's how they maintained sanitation over there. And that was all Vietnam. So you smelled that constantly. And then, of course, the smell of napalm. And there's just some smells you just don't ever get out of your senses. And every once in a while, you'll catch a whiff. It'll take you right back there again. Another strong smell for me that brings back memories was hauling the grunts that had been out in the boonies for 2 weeks, in the rain and the heat and the sweat and everything, not able to bathe. And that's a unique smell in itself that you never get over. And then we hauled a lot of Nook Bomb, which was food. We carried it in 175 canisters. It was for the Vietnamese. They ate it. And what it was is they would take fish heads and rice and some kind of cabbage and stuff and put it in these tubes and put the lid on it with water, and they would bury it in the ground for 6 months, and it would sit there and ferment. Well, you can imagine what that smells like. And that's what those ARVNs ate out in the field, and we would haul that, and it'd spill in the helicopter and everything. So there was just a lot of smells about Vietnam that were pretty strong. But one of the greatest things was that being a helicopter pilot, you take off in the mornings to fly up in the mountains. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. And of course, it's all triple canopy jungle up there in the mountains and stuff. But orchids grow wild out there. And you take off in the mornings and you fly up through the mountains, and of course you had all the doors off and everything. And the smell of those orchids drifting through the helicopter it just made things easier. And it was a beautiful smell.
Were you a prisoner of war?
No.
Were you awarded any medals or citations?
Yeah, I of course, we got the Vietnam Combat Medal, Vietnam Service Medal. I got 3 DFCs, which Distinguished Flying Cross, and Distinguished Flying Cross with 3 Oak Leaf Clusters, and 25 Air Medals also. But never really doesn't mean anything to me, because you get those medals for just going out and doing what you're supposed to be doing anyway. Yeah, it was intense, and we did things that sane people wouldn't do, but it was just what you did. And especially if you was going in to take care of a buddy, pull somebody out or something, well, you just did it. Didn't think nothing about it. So medals have never meant anything to me, because I didn't feel that I deserved them for, I don't know how to say it, but it was just, they just gave them to you for doing what you're supposed to do.
Do we need to adjust audio? Well, you hit it twice. I figured you were back there monitoring.
Yeah, I hit it twice. It may not be where you want it now.
Sounds great.
I can't talk without my hands.
You might touch on his pilot training on helicopter.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
That's where we're getting. It's okay. So, any particular stories about like your flight training? Because you said you started out in planes, and then
Well,
you went into helicopters.
Yeah, I went to basic training at Fort Polk, Louisiana. When I left there, I went to Warrant Officer Candidate School and pilot training at Fort Walters, Texas, and we flew little TH-55s, which were belt driven, and there were hundreds of them down there, because they was really training a lot of pilots at that time, and they was really pushing pilots through and washing out pilots left and right. They would kick you out for the minorest of things. And when I got in there to flight training, well, they allowed you 7 hours to learn how to hover. Hovering a helicopter is like standing on a big ball. It's really hard to do. And it takes a while to get used to it. And I had 7 hours, and it just happened. I just went out there that morning, and I could hover. And another thing is when we had our first solo cross-country flight, I was used to flying up here in Oklahoma where you have grid lines, you have mile sections, and so north, south, east, and west and all that. Well, when I soloed and we did a cross country, I got lost because it took me a little while longer to get off the ground for some reason. I had some maintenance issues, and so I had to leave later than everybody else. I didn't go down with the flight. Well, in Texas, there's nothing runs north, south, east, and west, so I got lost. They wash you out in flight school for anything. Well, they had to come find me. And I talked to them on the radio, where you at? Well, I don't know. And so they finally found me, but I just knew for sure I was probably going to get washed out over that deal, but I didn't. And so something was going on here. And then later on in my flight training in Fort Walters, we finally got to leave, and I had a drinking problem ever since I was in high school. And I got drunk, and I was on my way to Dallas, and had a wreck in Weatherford, Texas, and I got thrown in jail. And of course, being thrown in jail in flight school, you're out of there. Well, the next morning, I got out and went back to base, and CO called me in. He says, Candidate Lucas, he said, I've got to go talk to the battalion commander and give him a reason for keeping you in the program. Can you give me one reason why I ought to keep you in the program? And I, sir, Candidate Lucas, you ought to keep me in the program because I couldn't think of any reason to keep me in the program. And he just started laughing. He just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Well, come to find out, he'd been thrown in the same jail a week before. So, you know, the good Lord's in charge of our lives, and He directs our paths, and we may think we're in charge, but we're not. But I can see the Lord working in my life and guiding and directing me in everything that I did. I did so many things to get kicked out of flight school that anybody else would have got kicked out, but they didn't kick me out. And there's plenty of times I wish they would have, you know. But anyway, I didn't, and I made it through flight school, and made it through Fort Walters, and then went to advanced training in Fort Rucker, Alabama, and was introduced to the Hueys there, and we started flying Hueys, B-model Hueys, and we'd have 2 students in the helicopter at a time with an instructor, and one student was sitting in the back seat while the other one flew. Well, we landed in a confined area in an LZ that they had set up there, and when we came out of the LZ, I caught a tree about that big around with my main rotor blade. I was chopping wood, and then the instructor grabbed it and took it and landed it and everything, and we didn't have any problem, except it did take about that much off of each of the main rotor blades. Well, for sure that'd get you kicked out, you know. No, it didn't get me kicked out either. I mean, I was destined. I was going to fly helicopters and go to Vietnam. I mean, it was just that way. So I didn't ever get kicked out of flight training. And after we got through with the Hueys and everything, we did our instrument training there. Well, we did that in little OH-13s, which is like, well, you don't know who the whirlybirds are, but it's a bubble type helicopter. And it's just a small helicopter, and we did our instrument training in that. Well, I went through all the instrument training and everything, and the day of my check ride, I was out there, and I was having a horrible, horrible time, because you're under a hood, you can't see out or anything. All you can see is the instruments, and things are going tough for me, and I'm having a rough time of it and everything. And anyway, we got finished, and we went back. And the check pilot was riding with me, was just laughing. He thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And what had happened was I was flying an ADF, which is an old type radio that they used for navigation in those days. And there was a thunderstorm out there, and I was chasing that thunderstorm because that ADF was pointing at that thunderstorm because of the electrical. So I didn't really pass my instrument ticket. But, of course, I did go ahead and pass. And like I said, I'm just destined to fly. So those are just some of the things that happened to me in flight training.
Any particular flights that stick out in your mind
Flights?
while you were in country?
In country here? Well, I told you about chopping the wood, so that was pretty significant. We used to eat boiled peanuts while I was flying. And no, flying formation with a bunch of student pilots. That was pretty hair-raising. Night flying, I never really liked it either. And but no, there's just nothing else sticks out in my mind.
So how did you stay in touch with your family?
When I was in Nam, with snail mail, we just mail, and they made us write to our families. And also, back in that day, Mars radio. And you'd wait up, and if you was going to talk to your parents back home, you'd go down to the command center down there, and they would patch you through to a ham radio operator. It was a Mars station, is what it was. And they would patch you through to a ham radio operator somewhere. I always wound up talking to somebody in Hawaii. And then they would make a phone call to whoever it was that you was calling, and it was like talking on the radio. You'd say, hello, over. And every time you got through, you had to say over, so they'd know to switch the ham radio operator would know to switch it from transmit to receive. And so that was a big thing back then, to be able to talk to your parents, because you're half a world away. And it was a big thing to be able to talk to them.
That's pretty crazy.
But you had to do like 3 o'clock in the morning because of the time difference and everything. So, and I forgot to tell you about the flight to Vietnam. We left San Francisco at 11 o'clock one day, 11 o'clock in the morning. We got to Vietnam at 10 o'clock the same day as we left. We went through that many time zones on the flight over there that we actually gained an hour, and it was still the same day. And if you don't think that won't mess your brain up and your body up, that was a tough deal. And that flight was 21 hours long. You sat in that airplane for 21 hours, and I made that flight 4 times, over and back, over and back.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was real crazy.
So what was the food like?
In country, in Vietnam, at Camp Evans, Phu Bai steak. We had Phu Bai steak for breakfast. We had Phu Bai steak for lunch and for supper. Every meal you had Phu Bai steak, which was dehydrated roast beef that they rehydrated. But sometimes they didn't get it hydrated enough, and it was like eating cardboard. But it tasted pretty good. It wasn't too awful bad. And then, of course, the vegetables and all that stuff. And we really ate well in the company, except for that Phu Bai steak. You had it all the time, every meal. I mean, there wasn't much variation on that. Now, breakfast, you go over and have eggs cooked however you wanted them, and bacon and stuff. But it was all right. But that, and we ate a lot of sea rats and LRPs. LRP are long-range patrol rations. And if you could get your hands on that, that was a big, big item to be able to get your hands on, because it was dehydrated food in packets, and all you did was add hot water and squish it up and everything, and it really tasted good. Everybody really liked that. And we ate sea rats, the sea rations that were 1946, 1945, World War II sea rations.
Really?
Yeah. And they were that old, but they were good. I mean, there were some of them like ham and eggs that you really learned to like. One of the things that did get me through Vietnam was Tabasco sauce. If it wouldn't have been for Tabasco sauce, I would have never survived Vietnam. My mom would send it over to me and everything. And Jean Miggy, a good friend of the family, she sent me a popcorn popper, electric popcorn popper, and some popcorn. And oh, that was just a touch of heaven right there. But of course, the popcorn was gone that night. But that popcorn popper, we cooked in it, in our hooch. And we never wash it out, we just rinse it out and throw it out the back door. And we'd cook in it, almost every day. We'd put sea rations in there, heat them up and everything, mix them up and stuff like that. But it's a wonder you didn't get sick, but you didn't.
So you had plenty of supplies.
Yeah, the beer over there, they brought it in on pallets, and then that day and age, the cans weren't made of aluminum; they were metal cans, and these pallets would set out there, especially pallets of Pabst Blue Ribbon. That was the most attainable one, and it's just nasty anyway. That or Slits, and they would set in these pallets out there in the sun, and then cool at night, hot in the day, cool it, and the tops would be all rusted and everything. So you wipe the rust off and pop the top, and you just drank it anyway. But yeah, the beer was kind of rough over there. I mean, it's horse piss or Slits. That was about the choices you had. But we drank more than our share of it. Everybody did.
Did you feel any pressure or stress?
We lived in constant fear. I mean, it was just, you was stressed all the time. And we would come in from flying, and we would usually drink ourselves into oblivion every night, and just almost everybody did. It was just, there was nothing else to do. You just come in and you hit the officers club and you just drank, and then you get up the next day and go do it again. And of course, there every once in a while, well, it was your last day on earth, so you just really, the hell with it. Just go ahead and drink yourself in oblivion. And but we had an officers club there with a little gal that took care of it, kept it clean for us, and poured the drinks for us. And her name was Lynn, and she was a real sweetheart. She was a Vietnamese woman. But yeah, it kept us going.
Was there something special you did for good luck? Anything you kept on your person?
Pray. I was not a born-again Christian when I was over there, but I prayed. I knew about God, and I did some serious praying. And I learned how to pray fast over there. At times, you could rattle off a pretty fast prayer. And there's no such thing as luck, But the good Lord took care of me, and I came back with just the original holes in me that I went over with, and no more, no less. So he took good care of me.
I think you kind of touched on this, but maybe there's something else. How did people entertain themselves?
We did have USO shows that would come every once in a while, set up in the hangars, and they'd put on shows for us and everything, and that was entertaining. And then usually after the shows, we'd haul the girls back down to Camp Eagle, which was south of us, and being pilots, well, we'd fly them down there and stuff. That was kind of insane. We did some crazy things on the way back from there too. But yeah, we had the USO shows, and we really did appreciate them. And the longest day of flying I flew 11 and a half hours solid. Never stopped all day long. And that was on December 20th, 1970. I was flying guys from the boonies into the Bob Hope show. And we hauled them in there, and they watched the Bob Hope show, and then after that we hauled them back out. And 11 and a half hours solid. And the reason I know it was December 20th is because that's my birthday. What a way to spend your birthday. And I never did get to see the Bob Hope show.
Were there any other good entertainers there?
Well, those Koreans, it was amazing, those Koreans. They sounded just like Americans when they sang. And of course, the Beatles were big back then and everything, and they'd sing those Beatles songs and stuff. And they were really talented people.
What did you do when on leave?
I got divorced. My first wife divorced me, and they came up with a deal that you could go home on emergency leave instead of going on R&R. Most everybody else went to Australia or Hawaii on R&R. I rocked along there, and I quit hearing from my wife, and I couldn't get in touch with her. Nobody knew anything about her or anything, so I put in for emergency leave, and I came home. And I'd been back here 2 days, and there came a knock at the door, and I got out of bed. I was in bed with my wife, and I went to the door, and it was Gary Sinclair. And he said, "Luke," he said, "your wife must be three kinds of a bitch." And I said, "Whoa, what are you doing coming over and calling my wife a bitch?" And he handed me the divorce papers. And that's what I did on my R&R, on my leave. So anyway, I went back to Vietnam, had a bad attitude, stayed drunk for 5 days, AWOL, in Saigon. Got back in the company, CO called me in, said, "Luke, where you been?" I said, "My wife divorced me while I was at home." He said, "Okay." And that's all he ever said. So anyway, I had a bad attitude because I was in love, and I always thought it was one man, one woman for life, you know. But she got caught up in an adulterous affair. We were young and dumb back then, and so every bad mission that come up, they'd say, "Give it to Luke. He doesn't care if he lives or dies." And I didn't care if I lived or died back then. So every bad mission they had that looked like it was certain death, they would send me on it. And it got me killed more times than I like to remember. And but once again, the good Lord just took care of me, you know, and brought me back safe and sound. Now, I will go on and tell you that Bonnie and I are good friends today. I hold nothing against her. She's totally forgiven by me. And we're good friends today. Both of my ex-wives. I have 2 ex-wives, and we're all good friends.
Something good came of that. Where did you travel while in the service?
Vietnam.
Just all over the country or anywhere else?
Oh, while I was in Vietnam?
I mean, did you go anywhere else?
Oh, yeah. I got the 25-cent tour. When I went to Vietnam, I saw North Vietnam, South Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. They sent me places I didn't even want to go. So that's the extent of my travels right there.
Do you recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Oh, there was a lot of humorous things that happened over there, and you said humorous and what? What was the other?
Or unusual?
Unusual. Wow, every day was unusual, really. I mean, you didn't always get shot at every day, but there was always something unusual that happened during the day and stuff. Well, I cut a coconut out of a tree with a helicopter. And that was kind of unusual. I just got up to a hover and just inched it forward and tipped the rotor blade, cut the coconuts off, and they fell to the ground, and we landed and picked them up. Away we went, you know. And we did some insane things over there too. It was my big thing for a while. I like to let the crew chief come up and fly, and then I would go back and lay on. When we go to POL, which is to get fuel, I would get a whole bunch of big old rocks, and I'd load them in the helicopter. And we'd get up flying, and I'd get my crew chief up there in my seat, and I'd crawl back there in the back, and I like to lay on my belly with my head hanging out and try and drop rocks on sampans in the river. You know, we'd be up 2,000 feet, and I never really thought that I could hit one, you know, but it was fun trying and watch the splash and everything. Well, one day I dropped a big old rock, and it landed about this far from a sampan with 2 guys in it, and it scared me to death. If I would have hit that sampan, it would have just folded up, and, you know, probably killed them two guys. But anyway, they jumped out of the sampan and everything. And I never did do that after that. But we used to fly over villages and drop CS grenades in the villages, which was tear gas. And that's kind of sick, you know, to do that. But it was just fun. And we used to go out and shoot at the lizards. They had lizards 10 feet long, you know, in the rivers and stuff. And then one of our big things was that we used to they had Montagnards over there, which were native people. They were mountain people, and they were savages. The women just wore skirts, no tops, and the men wore loincloths. They were just savages, but good old American. We got over there. We're going to bring them back out of the mountains and bring them down to here, and teach them a better life. Well, they were perfectly good up there, but it was pilots that like to fly up and down the rivers, you know, and watch the girls bathing out there and stuff. So.
What were some of the pranks that you or others would pull besides what you said?
Well, I really can't think of much of any pranks that we'd pull on each other and stuff. I know we did, but some of the enlisted men were always throwing CS grenades in the company area, and that wasn't very funny because, you know, you didn't have a gas mask. Well, all you do is bury your head in a pillow, and that some of the guys did that, and but I guess I was talking to a friend of mine, Bobby Brown, about this the other day, and if a pilot got word that he was going out on a bad mission the next day, our big joke was to say, "Hey, if you get killed, can I have your boots?" You know, and we'd laugh and think it was funny and everything. It was really kind of sick and sad, but that was just what we did, you know. Can I have your boots? I got dibs on your boots, you know.
Do you have any photographs?
I have some photographs. I lost most of my photographs in a flood, in the first 500-year flood we had. Had them in the barn and lost them. So, but I'm not going back to make any more pictures. So.
Who are the people in the photographs, or were in the photographs?
Oh, they were. It was our company area, our hooches we lived in, the officers club. I do have a picture of our mess hall burning. We were coming in one day, and our mess hall got hit with a rocket, and it was on fire. So I have video of that coming into the haunted house with the mess hall burning.
So what did you think of your officers or fellow soldiers?
You know, we never got very close to each other. But then again, we were very close. We put our lives on the line every day for each other. And you never leave anybody behind. It was just an unwritten rule that if somebody got shot down, you went in and got them out. And but we just never really got close, like you can get close to a friend back here, you know. Because you knew that life was fragile over there, and if you got too close, then you was probably going to have to bear the separation of them getting killed or something, and you just didn't want to open yourself up to that kind of pain. But we shared a camaraderie that you know, that people in other situations wouldn't share, but still not close, not close.
Did you keep a personal diary? Or
No. Matter of fact, we tried to forget everything that we did. And I'm blessed because a lot of Vietnam I don't remember it. And I count that as a blessing.
Do you recall the day that your service ended?
Oh, yeah. On the night that we left Cameron Bay, I was in the latrine and probably drunk. Without a doubt, I was drunk. And they come and got me and said, "Come on, we're leaving." It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. And my buddies come and got me, and then we took off and we got on the Freedom Bird and headed out and came back to Fort Lewis, Washington. While I was in Vietnam, they come up with a new deal. They just wanted RLOs for pilots, and those were commissioned officers, and that's what they wanted to have as pilots. So they offered warrant officers an early out. Well, I was in Vietnam when they asked me that. I mean, they didn't have to ask me twice. I said, "Let me out of here." So when I came back, I got an honorable discharge from the Army because of that early out. I actually only served about 2.5 years in the military. I was signed up for 4 years, but I only had to do 2.5 years.
So what was it like when you got back to the States?
It was home, you know. We weren't well received. That's for darn sure. And we were yelled at, cursed at, baby killers, spit on, you know. We were not well received when we got back. The biggest thing I remember is after we had been discharged and we were able to leave the base, me and a bunch of my friends got a taxi, and we had this guy named Carlisle that we'd been in the basic and flight school and everything. We went to Vietnam with and everything. We didn't serve together over there. But Carlisle had this thing about Steam and Cream. He loved to go to Steam and Cream and get a massage. And he was always at the massage parlor in Vietnam. And we were pulling out of the driveway at Fort Lewis, Washington, and we got up to the intersection there, and there was a big sign there, Steam and Cream. Carlisle said, "Let me out." That's the last I ever saw him. He went to Steam and Cream when he got back to the States, and that's the last I ever saw him. I stayed with a friend of mine in California for 4 or 5 weeks, I guess, before I ever came on home.
So what was it like coming back to Tonkawa?
Well, I don't know, it just don't stick out in my mind. It's just, it was good to be home. There was one person I didn't ever want to see when I was walking down the street, but we lived in a small town in Tonkawa, and so, you know, it was inevitable that we'd run across each other's paths, but no, we kind of floundered when we got back here. We were lost. We were used to adrenaline pumping all the time. Something going on, exciting, questionable, you know, uncertain. But you come back here and it was just dead. And people said and did the dumbest things, you know, that just complaining about little things that just, they should have been happy it was happening to them, you know, that they were in a place where it could happen to them. But you just had a hard time dealing with it because the stupidity of some of the people back here and the way they acted and everything. And then, of course, you didn't want to tell anybody that you were military. I mean, that you been just discharged from the military or that you just come back from Vietnam. You go to apply for a job and they ask you on application, did you serve in the military? You didn't want to put it on there for fear that you probably wouldn't get the job if they found out you'd been in the military. That's how much despised it was. But anyway, it's just the way it was back then. I joined the Army, went to basic training, went to flight school, went to Vietnam, came home, and I couldn't buy beer legally, and I couldn't vote. Fly $1 million aircraft over there, but they wouldn't let you buy a beer and vote. I was 20 years old. But there's a reason they have them young pups do that. Because old timers like me, they would tell us to go do something, and we'd tell them what to do. They could just take a short walk off a long walk off a short pier, because we wasn't going to do it. So that's why they got those young pups that are full of piss and vinegar and ready to go do that kind of thing, you know. They didn't question it.
So did you go to work or back to school?
I worked at odd jobs around here. I worked at Wedmore's for a while. But I decided that I would use my GI Bill and go back to Spartan School Aeronautics and get all my fixed wing ratings. And so that's what I did. I went to Spartan School Aeronautics over there on the GI Bill. Got all my fixed wing ratings, my instrument instructor, and all my instructor ratings and everything. And when I left there, I went to work at Stafford Field in Weatherford, Oklahoma, as a flight instructor. I did that for about 1.5 years. And then I left there and went back to flying helicopters. I herded cattle in South Texas for about 1.5 years in Bell 47 helicopters. And then my dad asked me to come home and help on the farm. So I came home and went back to farming.
You miss it?
Huh?
You miss like flying?
I did miss flying. I'd get so homesick for flying sometimes. I'd be out working in the field and I'd be up by the airport and you just get this homesickness for the air, to be up in the air where it's free and you're not bound by anything, by this earth. You know, I'd work my way through it. Every once in a while I'd go up and fly just for the heck of it. But that was back when you could afford to do that. But I've finally remarried and settled down to farm life and had a son, Brody Lucas. But shortly after Brody came along, when he was 2 years old, my second wife had an adulterous affair. Got pregnant by another man. So we got a divorce there too. I raised Brody by myself out there on the farm. And I knew I had to be free to come and go so I could raise him, you know. So I started a small engine repair service out there on the farm. And so I did that for 17 years while I was raising Brody. And then Brody got up in high school, and I got to thinking about he's going to be leaving one of these days. And so I decided to take on foster kids. So I started raising foster kids as a single feller. And I helped out 15 foster kids along the way. And we've had a wonderful, wonderful life. It's just been an exciting life.
Did you make any close friendships while in the service?
In the service, well, like I said, we never really got close. But we did keep in touch with each other when we got back. One of the biggest things I found out when we got back from Vietnam was everybody went by their call sign or their nicknames over in Vietnam, and you didn't really even know the person's real name. And that was a chore to find out whose people's names were and everything. But was real fortunate that I flew with the Ghost Riders, and they established a website. And Goober established this website and has brought all the Ghost Riders back together again. And we have We have everybody's information, their current addresses, phone numbers, and everything, and we're able to keep in contact with each other. So.
I might have to get that website then. What was your call sign then?
I was Ghost Rider 29. My brother Chris, he was a stud in high school, athlete, football player, all that. He was born a cowboy. I think he had cowboy boots when he came out, but he was always a cowboy my whole life. And his favorite song was Ghost Riders in the Sky. And so he got killed in high school. And I go to Vietnam. Who did I fly with? Ghost Riders. And that's not a coincidence either.
Did you join any? Do you need to take a minute? Are you good?
Say again.
Are you good? I'll give you a second. It's a good song. You're doing good.
Okay. I think I'm ready. Here, let me get a drink from.
All right.
Okay.
You gotta. So, did you join any veterans associations when you got that?
I did. I joined the Vietnam Veterans Association, but I'm just not really a joiner, and I don't go to meetings or anything. I'm a member. I'm pretty much a loner.
I think you talked about what you did as a career. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
Oh, well, of course it did. You can't go through what we went through that it didn't influence you. The biggest thing, being an officer, we sat in on the briefings when they were planning their strategies and everything. We would sit in on the briefings, and the thing that really caused me to want to get out of the military was those briefings where you would sit in a briefing and they would say, okay, we're going to go take this hill right here. We're going to lose 200 men, 4 helicopters, and, and they knew that going in there. That was the price that we was going to pay for that. And it just seemed to me like they were playing fun and games with people's lives, and it just wasn't for me. And when I got the opportunity to get out, I got out. My dad was military all the way, and he said, son, you'll regret it one of these days that you got out, but I've never regretted it for 1 second. I was proud to have served. I wouldn't take $1 million for the experience I had when I was over there, but I'd sure pay $1 million to keep from going back and having to do it again.
So, is there anything specific that your service did to affect your life? Like, did you said you had learned to pray. Did that affect your religious beliefs or anything like that being over there?
No, that didn't really have anything to do with me becoming a born-again Christian. There is one thing that God did for me while I was over there. like I said, when somebody got shot down, we went in to pick them up. We didn't leave them on the ground. We'd go in and get them, if at all possible. Well, Gov and Fertilizer, which is their nicknames, call signs, they got shot down in Laos. And so Sandy and I took off, and he was flying as the aircraft commander, and I was flying in the right seat. And we were headed out to get these guys out of the jungle. They crashed in the Triple Canopy jungle. And we were flying along, and the Lord gave me this vision and spoke to me and said, you're going to draw heavy anti-aircraft fire, small arms fire. But don't worry, it's going to be all right. And when you land, you'll have one round in the tail rotor. And I felt perfect peace. And I was the biggest chicken that ever hit Vietnam. There was nobody could get to a bunker faster than me. I mean, I was scared when I was over there, and I don't mind telling you. But I had perfect peace. And I told Sandy, I told Sandy we're going to take intense fire here in a minute, but I said, it's going to be all right. I said, the Lord just told me. And no sooner did I say that, and the whole world just opened up. Green tracers coming up all around us, straight up, like that. And I still had perfect peace. And as soon as it started, it stopped. We went through there, and I told Sandy, I said, when we get in and shut down, I said, there'll be one round in the tail rotor. And he looked like me, like I'd lost it, And so anyway, we went in and hovered down and got Gov and the rest of the crew, and we went back into Quezon. We shut down, and we walked back there, one round the tail rotor. Now, God did that. I don't know why. Like I said, I was not a born-again Christian at the time. But I'm a big believer in prevenient grace, that God takes care of those that are going to be His. And because God knows the beginning from the end. But He gave me that vision for some reason. And I cherish that time. It built my faith tremendously. And I did want to tell you about one other time we got shot down up by the rock pile. It was a very intense, hot area up there, and I was flying with this other guy, and we went in. These guys were in trouble. They were on a ridge line right by the rock pile, and we had to go in there and resupply. So, because they were out of ammo. So we went in there and landed and kicked that ammo off, and we took off. And we took intense 50 cal. Now, a 50 cal tracer looks like a basketball coming up at you. That's the size of it, this tracer coming at you. And we took a hit. And we had Cobras on each side of us. And we turned around like this, and we're still flying. Lights are lighting up, caution lights, everything. The guy's just going crazy and all this. And I'm on the radio saying we're hit. And anyway, they're yelling at us, you're on fire, put it down. And I looked down there, and you could see the Vietnamese on the ground below us. And I said, there's no way we can set it down here. I said, we're going to fly it till it shits. And we were still flying it. We kept flying the aircraft, And I looked up, and I saw a tank battery up there. When they make a tank battery, they circle the tanks around in a circle with an open area in the middle. That's where we headed. Because you knew if you was in the middle of the tanks, you was going to be safe. So the snakes were going along beside us, and the smoke's just billowing out the back of us. Because the snake driver was saying, Luke, you're on fire, put it down, And I said, I can't. I said, I'm going to that tank battery. And so we're on short fire with a tank battery. And it's funny now, it wasn't funny then. But I look down there, and them tank drivers look up at us, and they just take off running. Well, that's not something you want to see. When you're coming in, and they say you're on fire, to see everybody on the ground taking off. But anyway, what it was, we took a round in the transmission, and it was cool that day. And that hot transmission oil came out and hit that cool air and was vaporized, so it looked worse than it was. But anyway, we sat down in that tank battery, and it was okay. But I'll never forget to look at down there and seeing all those guys take off running into the jungle. That's not a good sight.
Oh, you made it out. So, is there anything that you would like to add that we have not covered in this interview? It seems like you're beating me to every question.
Well, I have something to say about the state of affairs today. We're up against the worst enemy now than we ever faced in Vietnam or anywhere else. And it's the liberal ideology, and what's going on in this world today. We're losing America. If something doesn't change and we start doing away with these liberal ideas and everything, this country is short-lived. It will not be able to stay around very long. So we have a worse enemy today than we've ever faced in the history of America. And we just have to change. And it's not right and left. It's right and wrong. And that's where we're at today. It's a choice between right and wrong. So we have to change. And I hate to see America go, but I'm afraid that we're dealing with something that's beyond us that we're not going to be able to overcome and correct. But like I was telling Joe before we got started, kids today, people today, don't know what it means to be an American. For those who have fought for it, you never live until you almost die. And for those who have fought for it, freedom has a flavor the protected will never ever know. Freedom comes at a cost. It's not free.
Well,
And that's about all I have to say about that.
I'm going to look over my notes real quick. Is it okay if I have another question, if I can get a hold of you and talk to you about it, and not necessarily come in and do another interview?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure, you can ask me anything, anytime, anywhere.
All right.
I don't have any secrets.
Let's see. All right. Well, I really appreciate you doing this.
All right, well, I'm glad it's over with. I hope it made sense. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, it did. All of these are exactly what we're looking for. No question. It's like you said, nobody knows about it. I mean, it's not something you want to talk about, but
I don't even think Vietnam's even talked about in school anymore.
It will be now.
I don't think it's even in the history book. Looks or anything. Do you?
well, you definitely don't learn any of this stuff.
That's why we're doing it, John.
Yeah. But those kids at school are not going to see it. So.
You never know.
Well,
At
yeah.
least it'll be there. And the stories will be there. And we'll have honored the combat soldiers. We'll have
Yeah.
honored the ones that went for us that passed away that didn't make it.
Need to write something for the newspaper too, don't I?
We have is this offer on? We have thank you,